Welcome to MGO Bucks. It's a special Saturday edition. Hope everyone's having a great weekend. Matt and I are obviously dressed alike. We did not plan this. We just realized this as soon as we got on. I'm the Michigan guy, and I'm wearing gray. So I'm a little perplexed that I didn't even think about that. Definitely gonna do something different. But Matt was just on a really awesome podcast called the Buckeye Huddle. You guys probably, if you're a Buckeye fan, you probably know that very well. Excuse me. But Matt was talking about his misinformation article that he just recently wrote about Michigan, the NCAA. And I'm joking about that because Matt actually did an awesome job. Even though I disagree with 100% of it, he actually did an awesome job. He's a lawyer, and so he's absolutely qualified to be writing a huge manifesto like that. That's basically as impressive as it was. Intrinsic, he picked it up, ran with it. Then the Buckeye Huddle noticed him, came out, and yes, Brian, his AI article. And I will say, I'll defend Matt in this. He did use AI to make the article, which pretty much everyone uses AI now, even in the law profession. But Matt actually has the credentials to go through and make sure that AI and all the information that he's pulling together. Matt, I'll let you talk to this, but you have the credentials to actually look at it all and make sure AI put it together, because AI sometimes like totally screws things up, as you well know. But Matt, how you doing? And tell us how it went on the Buckeye Huddle.
Yeah, it was great. I've been listening to those guys forever, and I've been reading their articles for even longer than that. Like back when they were writing for the Ozone, I think Tony especially was writing, in the 90s on the Ozone, writing. You and I have been reading his articles on like since forever ago. And I think Tom has been on came on a little bit after Tony, but been following their stuff for years and years and years, and we've emailed here and there about articles over the years, but it's the first time I actually got to meet both those guys on a podcast, so that was a lot of fun.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, before you jump into this, I think we're gonna talk about Connor Stalions, because we're on penalty watch right now, totally, because I think it's actually going to come up. I keep hearing it's next week, but I have no idea. I don't know how anyone knows that. I haven't heard Ross Dellinger or anyone with any kind of credentials saying it, but we're pretty sure it's going to happen before the start of the season. But Matt, so I think your article, speaking to that, tell them, like, what were your findings? Give like a quick summary. We won't go into it as in depth as they did on Buckeye Huddle. Those guys are awesome.
They were reading every single bylaw.
They were in depth. That was very. There was a lot of depth to that. But give like just an overall kind of like what you're finding.
Yeah, the main thing I was sort of trying. Yeah, the reason I sort of decided to come up with it, just as a fan of the sport in general, people do a really good job in the media with whatever the current news is, but no one rarely ever puts together sort of comprehensive pieces anymore, because most people, it seems like, with 24-hour or 5-hour or 2-hour news media nowadays, like on Twitter or wherever else you're looking, like, it's, people just forget what happened 30 minutes ago, let alone 2 years ago, right? So it's there's just doesn't seem to be a whole lot of information putting everything together. So I just sort of was wanting to mostly do this for myself and to rub into Nate's face, like all the dirty infractions that they've been piling up over the last couple of years. And I didn't even get in. I was only doing stuff that was verified. Like, I wrote another article too, sort of really focusing on the lack of institutional control and what goes into that, and sort of focusing also on, from the president on down, and like, different coaches that have been getting in trouble for things even unrelated to this, and how I thought that sort of tied together. And I, briefly, for instance, mentioned, the Connor Stalions vacuum company that he had LLC with Blake Corum, which would make him ineligible. However, Blake Corum said that was, not his signature. So it's interesting that, that was, one of the only areas that I never really went into depth on, because there's not a single news article anywhere on the internet that has really done any kind of legitimate research into that issue, because there's just no sourcing on it. So, being that the NCAA doesn't have subpoena power, that's why you get some heavy punishments. But there's been really no follow-up. Blake Corum was asked one time about it. He looked really uncomfortable answering it, and that was it. There's been no follow-up with him or anyone else. I haven't heard anyone else write or talk about that, and it's just sort of been, memory hold. So anyway, in both my articles, I was only talking about stuff that could be verified. Basically, whatever precedent I could find that was sort of relevant as far as very serious punishments. Obviously, this is a unique situation, and there hasn't really been anything similar to a 58 game advanced scouting scheme with multiple people involved and everything else. Whether or not you agree that or think that that's a serious violation, I know Nate thinks it's not a big deal, since it's based on his understanding, he doesn't think it helps.
In-person scouting is scouting of public information in my eye. I mean, it can still be against the bylaws and you can be punished for it, but we're still talking about public info. I mean, if a coach, I know we probably don't want to go down that rabbit hole, but I'm saying if a coach signals in a game in front of tens of thousands of fans and in front of TV cameras and in front of the other team across the field, to me, that's not proprietary information anymore. They just put that signal out in the public, and if you notice that they run, that they have a run play that runs left, then I mean that's just kind of the name of the game. So that's why that's why coaches try and hide it with like multiple signalers and that type of thing. But it's not as it's a little sleazy what he did, but it's not like he hacked into Ohio State's system and stole all of their signals out of their computer bank or anything like that. So that would be cheating. But in my mind, and you and I, we have a bet going on right now, and we've mentioned this before, but we didn't do a very good job on our bet, because I bet you that Michigan would get neither a bowl ban or vacating games, neither one, and you said they would get both. So if Michigan gets one of them, I guess our bet is forfeit. We're gonna have to think about that, but
we might have
it's going to be an issue, because I don't think they're going to get either. Day 1K, he thinks they're going to split the difference between that and Michigan, Ohio State. That Ohio State fans want. Yeah, it might be something like that, but
I mean that's the crazy thing with the NCAA.
That would be irritating.
The reason why I slightly hedged my bet off of my initial guesses was because you just really don't know what you're getting with the NCAA, because you don't have anyone there like that ever really talks about it or explains things. It's just okay. There's going to be this big punishment for Penn State, for instance. Nothing like that had happened before, and it was a unique situation, so they destroyed them. USC, got really bad punishments. I mean, they got, one of the, it's been a while now since their issues, but they were completely destroyed. Whereas Tennessee went above and beyond in cooperation, hiring an independent agency to look into everything, and that didn't prevent them from still giving them a couple of years of bowl bans, but not I'm vacating wins, but there were no bowl bans because they cooperated so well. So it makes it really difficult. The one thing I think probably out of everything that I was researching and just from reading what people are talking about, I think the biggest thing that people don't understand is they think that because Tennessee did win one of their lawsuits against them about the NIL stuff.
So they didn't cooperate. Tennessee didn't fully cooperate. They actually had an opinion about the infractions, or I guess the allegations.
So the thing with the Tennessee, like one of their lawsuits was about the NIL stuff. So they won that one because it was an antitrust issue, and that's why the House settlement had to basically make a law that the federal judge agreed this is not an antitrust violation, and it's going to cover this big settlement in the entire class. Everyone pretty much opts in, and you have to specifically opt out if you don't want to be part of the class. And so all these people from the past were getting money for NIL stuff that they, it's not forever, but it was, it goes back to like the 90s or something like that. Like a good number of people were compensated. And now going forward, it's still sort of in limbo because we don't really know if that's going to be it, or if there's going to be, like Trump had an executive order. We don't know how that's going to potentially change things if that gets
as long as Bryce Underwood still gets his check.
Yeah,
all I care about.
Yeah, as long as it doesn't go retroactive, because right now, like as soon as the Deloitte system that's been put in place where all the NIL deals have to go through and get approved, and like I heard like when the first article that came out about it that said like 70% of the initial deals that were reviewed were rejected. So you can't just say, okay, well, this guy's a big offensive lineman and we're paying him $500,000 from some local spaghetti shop in Columbus. You can't do that anymore. Now it has to be like legitimate fair market value, and they have some system that determines that. And so this is where it's going to be really interesting. And I wish that stuff was made public so we could know like what's actually going on with these deals. That would be really nice. Like that's one of the things that's great about the NFL. Like, what those deals are. Everyone has contracts where you're there for a certain amount of time. It's not like, where someone goes to your school and like, look at Tennessee against Ohio State last year. Leading up to that game, their quarterback was trying to negotiate a deal, or he was threatening to sit out the bowl game, right? You can't do that stuff in the NFL. I mean, you could in the NFL, you can only do that pretty much like in preseason, right before mini camps and stuff like that. But after that, like once the season starts, either you're going to get fined and not paid, or that's it. Like you don't really have much leverage.
Yeah, they're gonna push it to the limit. I mean,
so like college really needs there just needs to be some some actual rules that everyone knows what the rules are, so everyone can try to compete, and you don't really know what's going on right now. And then anyway, back to my final answer, like I initially thought that the best case scenario was going to be a bowl ban and vacated wins. And now I'm thinking, just because I don't fully trust the NCAA, I do think that they have been very strict with any kind of rule violators that didn't deal with NIL. Everything else, that's still within their purview that they have power to do, and especially because they don't like Harbaugh, and they have definitely enjoyed making an example out of him, because I think you and I both agree the COVID violations in Burgergate were pretty minimal for how strict those punishments were. I mean, he got destroyed.
Yeah, but they knew he wasn't ever going to have to face them, it's real easy to flex.
But there's also been some other ones. Like there was, I don't know if he was from Michigan, but there was a coach that transferred recently to Wisconsin, and he got what I thought was a fairly minor infraction. I don't remember offhand what it was, but he got like a monster show cause. So like there's like all of these. Quick,
Brian just mentioned something interesting. He heard the last week of the month is when we think we're going to hear from the NCAA. So that timing is kind of interesting. Last week of the month is game week.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to read the tea leaves here a little bit. So if I was the NCAA and I was not going to hand out a bowl ban or vacated wins to Michigan, and I knew I was going to be angering the majority of the country that wants to see Michigan get the hammer, I would wait until as close as possible to kickoff for the year, so that angry news cycle was as short as possible. So that's interesting if it is the last week of the month that it's going to come out, whichever day of the week that is.
That's like the equivalent of a late Friday news dump. You do it right before the season starts. So people are still going to be talking about it because it's big news, but people are going to forget relatively quickly because the season just started and there's multiple major games the first weekend, and people are just going to they're going to care
there won't
more
be
about
enough
that.
bandwidth in the
exactly.
media to be able to
So
really be angry about that and talk about real football.
So if you subscribe to Nate's conspiracy theory, then that's definitely what's going to happen. However, if you remember the news when the Petiti letter was finally when it came out that he was writing a letter in support of Michigan not having any further punishment, in that article, it said that the news would be coming out in the next week or two, I believe. So I thought that that was reported in that same article when that happened. So that means it would be coming up within this week. Like it would be, it would be potentially this week if that was true.
Possibly. I guess, I mean, if there was an article saying that that's when they did it, maybe they will. I don't know. But it's interesting in any case. But I don't know. I tend to think, I mean, our bet is our bet. So we'll see how that transpires. But I don't know. I mean, the rest of the rest, there's actual football happening right now as far as fall camp. Like, what do you think of the Buckeye situation? I know they're having a pretty important spring or fall scrimmage today. I haven't heard anything about that. I think it's probably
I haven't heard anything about it yet either. But I've been busy all day.
But
yeah, I'm hearing like good things at almost every position, but just like most years, it's going to most likely come down to the quarterback. We seem to be having amazing depth almost everywhere, and like better depth at defensive line than I thought. And I think this is the best depth at offensive line we've had. We've had years where we've had better starters overall, but as far as depth, like I would say we have, let's see, 7 or 8 guys that I feel really confident in. Fairly to really high levels of confidence, and just a ton of experience too. And so it's not where you have like a bunch of guys that are just elite across the board, but very good and a lot of experience, which is very important in offensive line, and a lot of depth and a lot of guys on the line that can play multiple positions, which is really important. So like last year, like my biggest concern on the whole team winning the title was offensive line depth. And, luckily, I mean, we had horrible luck last year. Like this is the first time I can remember where we had we had an All-American center and, first round left tackle, both went out with injuries. And, somehow, we found a way to make it work. And I couldn't believe it. Like kudos to offensive line coach for making that happen. Like he got a lot of shit for his recruiting, because the depth at offensive line had been questionable. But he worked miracles last year and turned our left guard into a first round pick at left tackle.
So and I got a question for you about all of this as it relates to really because you're playing Texas, the very first game of the week, it's basically going to be number 1 versus number 2, which I think is a little contrived to put Ohio State at number 2. I think that might be for the week I don't think they're much further down than that, but as far as that goes though. Ooh, I threw a little dig in there, and I didn't give you a chance to respond. Hold on, you can respond. Hold on. So it's like it's almost like not 2 seasons, but you're getting ready for the season, and I know you're talking about the depth, but a lot of it just what do you expect for the Texas game? Because Ohio State lost so much in player personnel this year, and on top of that, coaches. Offensive coordinator, defensive coordinator, offensive line coach, that is so much thrash to have, and then have to go play the number 1 team in the country the very first game. I'm picking against Ohio State, not just because I'm a hater, but I really do actually think that's going to be a tough game for Ohio State to win because, like I said, all of the thrash that comes along with starting the season and everything you've lost, even if those guys are going to be great, the 5th game down in 5th game, maybe everything's figured out the way we think it will. Still, that first game, man, I feel like that might be just a little too much for the Buckeyes to handle, even at home.
Yeah, honestly, I'm a little surprised that we're favored. I think it's only probably 3 points or something, which is basically the home field advantage. I'd feel much better about it if it was a night game. I do think, I mean, like the big difference is just quarterback right now. And so like,
Texas did lose 13 guys to the NFL. That is true. They lost a lot too.
Yeah. So the interesting thing I think that people aren't really talking about is, so Texas is going to be a lot more green on offense, right? So like, even though Arch is supposed to be the truth and everyone thinks he's the best thing ever, I mean, he has so little experience. Like even the experience that he had, like Ewers went out last year and he I think he finished half of a game and then played 2 games against scrubs. Like I think it was like UTSM and Arkansas, some two terrible teams. And Arkansas was missing a bunch of their secondary players. So he hasn't even gone up against an even semi-competent defense yet. And, he played one snap, I think, against Ohio State and was knocked unconscious, at least temporarily. And was, he's knocked out of the game. I think both defenses, though, Texas lost a lot, but the reason it's so hard to judge sometimes, they got a ton on the transfer portal, especially at defensive line. So I don't know how good those players are going to be. I'm assuming they're going to be solid. I think their weakness is going to be replacing those 2, highly rated tackles and on offense. I think that's going to be really tough for them. And both teams having an experience at quarterback. I think honestly people are going to be expecting, because of the big names, they're going to be like, well, there's Arch Manning and they have a couple of big guys on offense, and then they have Ohio State with all of our receivers and everything else. I mean, I think it's going to be a low scoring game because of the quarterbacks. And, that's it. Like 2 elite defenses against 2 quarterbacks with very little experience. It's going to be a low scoring game. And whoever, gets the most turnovers off the quarterback making bad plays is going to win that game. And, it's going to probably be like,
Arch has 2 years
or something.
Arch has 2 years in the Texas system, so I would say he's maybe a little more experienced. He's had actual games.
No, he is. He's definitely more experienced. It's not
like he can go to the not going into the shoe and being able to really knock it out of the park or anything. But it's are you buying the quarterback competition between Julian Sayin and Lincoln Kienholz? And I get why Buckeye fans are a little like timid of going all in on Julian Sayin. I think it's all visual, because Julian Sayin looks a little, I mean, I was watching him talk during I can't remember what I think it was I can't remember exactly. I think it was just talking to the media, but he's a little bit effeminate. He's got kind of a high voice. He's got kind of a baby face. His name could totally be Opie. Like it totally could. Like you would not bat an eye.
He's not that big either. Like he's gained.
Yeah, I mean, there's like, other guys that have not been very big though.
In college, it's not as important except for durability. I mean, look at Bryce Young, was like 5'11", and he's actually doing well. Like the second half of the year in the NFL, he's finally picking it up. So he's a little bit smaller.
I don't know. You can see that his eyes, just kind of like the way he carries himself. And the kind of the way he looks, I don't think that's an issue. I'm saying that. I'm just saying I think that's maybe what people are just seeing on the outside. He's probably going to be really good. I think so. I believe in Ohio State system for a quarterback and receiver.
Yeah, by the middle or end of the year, I'm sure he'll be fine. That's why I'm just saying, like, I don't think he's going to be, obviously putting up big numbers against Texas in week 1, and we may lose the game because of that. But I think you go with him because he has a higher ceiling. And by the end of the year, we're going to, unless the team completely falls apart, which we have way too much talent to do that. And, I think Ryan Day has never had more than 2 losses in a season. I mean, it's just, he just, and if you have 2 losses, you're going to the playoffs. And, by the time we make the playoffs, Julian Sayin is going to have plenty of experience one way or the other, regardless of what the record is. And, I think we'll be fine at that point. It's just, I'm hearing so many good things about almost every position, just like freak shows athletically at every position. So even areas where we don't have a ton of starting experience, the guys coming in are just ridiculous athletic freaks, especially like a linebacker. And like the good thing is, like, even those people that don't necessarily have a ton of starting experience, they've still played a lot in reserve capacity. So there's very few people that haven't really played much aside from maybe like running back. And, one of the running backs from West Virginia has played, but, our backup hasn't played much. So Peoples is, going to be likely the starter, but I'm sure they're going to split it 50-50 just like last year. And, I'm sure both those guys are going to be fine. But replacing 2 first-round picks at running back it's never easy. I mean, that's like, the best 1-2 punch we've ever had probably since like Pete Johnson and Archie Griffin.
Lots of losses. Yeah, very true. I'm going to throw up the depth chart for Michigan and Ohio State's offensive lines. We'll pick which one's going to be.
Before you get to that, I need to address a couple people are saying that Penn State needs to be ranked. Look, I'm not saying for sure that Ohio State needs to be ranked top 2 because I think a lot of teams that are in the top 10 are very similar this year because there's just doesn't seem to be any one team that has that much more impressive depth than anyone else in the top like 8 to 10 because everyone has holes this year. It may play out differently, but going into the season, there doesn't seem to be any kind of a super team. So I'm just going to say I'm calling bullshit on anyone that's putting Penn State in the top 2 because Penn State, what do they have? Like 3 wins against top 10 teams in his tenure. Like he can't beat good teams ever. And anyone that thinks so is just wrong. You just don't know anything about football. He will not be able, I don't care who the defensive coordinator is or the offensive coordinator. They're supposed to be the best, but guess what? Franklin is still there. He sucks. He can never get over the hump. He's going to choke. He may even beat Ohio State once this year, but he's going to choke at some point. That's what he does. He doesn't win big games.
Well, let's take a look at their schedule real quick and see which games they're gonna choke.
Yeah, and I know they have a lot of depth and a lot of talent on the team. I don't think Drew Aller is that great. They don't have a superstar receiver.
I'm looking at their schedule though, Matt. Can you see this?
Yeah.
Oregon. You think they're going to beat Oregon at home? Oregon's got a brand new team too.
Oregon has, I mean, they did really well in the transfer portal, but again, they have huge questions at quarterback. They've been really good plug and play with quarterbacks, but usually they're getting quarterbacks that have had starting experience when they come in. This is a guy who, he's never really played, so he's a 5-star. But usually Oregon gets 5 stars from somewhere else that has had plenty of starting experience. This is the first time Lanning's had to actually do a recruit and actually make sure the quarterback can play.
Yeah.
Well, that's at Oregon. This is the first time he's had to do that.
Oregon and Ohio State are the only teams on here that can even beat Penn State, even with James Franklin and with
what about
Drew Aller kind of having like a low ceiling.
What about
he has a high floor, definitely.
What about the Indiana game? Like they were pretty good last year, and then
Nebraska, but I think Penn State lit up Indiana even last year.
Nebraska might be legit this year. They have a great quarterback.
Yeah, I don't think
they have a pretty good defense.
Penn State's going to beat those teams.
So, like most likely, Penn State is going to the playoffs. I'm not saying
I'm not picking Penn State to beat Ohio State. Never. Not until I actually see it. I would have to pick it maybe only after I see it done. That's
and they may.
I think they'll beat Oregon though
regular season, but they're not beating us in the playoffs, and they're definitely going to make the playoffs. It's just they're not going to do much when they get there unless they get an easy schedule like they did last year.
I think Oregon's got to travel to Penn State a long way across the country, and that has been bad for most teams. So I'm perfectly okay saying Penn State's going to have one loss. Go 11-1. Yeah. So I don't know where that rates them at the top, but
when people are saying that
going to Penn State, or they're not going to Ohio State and winning, I'm not going to say I guarantee it could happen, but
and I'm not saying I'm talking about end of year after the season is over rankings. Like they're not going to finish top 2. They may be top 2 early on because they have an easy schedule and they have a lot of returning players, but they don't have.
When they were in the playoffs, they went through the first 2 rounds only because I think they were playing SMU and also Ashton Genty. Just call it the
Team Genty.
Ashton Genty and some other players that were playing out there.
It's a joke.
But then they got beat by Notre Dame, which that was really just stupid.
Yeah.
But okay, where were we? Let me get out of here.
You were going to, I think, talk about offensive line depth or something?
Yeah, we gotta rate the Ohio State and Michigan offensive lines. So we kind of talked a lot about Ohio State losing 4 players, but
yeah, apparently you haven't been talking enough about Michigan, so you need to get on the ball.
You're bringing back a lot of guys from the national championship run in the playoffs, but still losing 4 guys. Michigan, on the other hand, we lose 2 guys. Miles Hinton was the left tackle. But when we played Alabama, it was pretty much this lineup that you see here, except for Nathan Afobe. He's the only new guy in that lineup. This is the Alabama lineup otherwise. And also, I mean, they did have Miles Hinton on the left when they beat Ohio State. But in my mind, I'm thinking Michigan's probably hitting the ground running with the offensive line. I don't know. I don't know how great they'll be in the beginning. We'll see against Oklahoma. But if I'm looking at these 2 offensive lines, this is really close for me. I might call this one a tie. What do you think?
I mean, doing well against Alabama last year isn't like the strongest endorsement, though. I mean, they, also this was a bowl game that didn't matter, so always hard to completely gauge how a bowl game turns out when it's a non-playoff game. Number 2, Alabama lost to Vanderbilt. They were a super up and down team last year. So either they were playing really well or they were playing terrible. There was really no in between. Like they looked great for most of that Georgia game, just good enough to win. But they also, looked terrible in a lot of games. So again, a lot of that was on the quarterback. So I don't know. I'm sure, Michigan always lately has had a solid line. I'm not saying that it's not going to be good. I'm sure your running game will be very good and the line will be fine.
Yeah.
It's going to, again, just like our team, it's going to most likely come down to quarterback play. You have a completely, rookie and very talented, but even less experienced quarterback than Ohio State. Our guy's at least been in the system for a year. So, that's a nice advantage, having a full year head start, and Art has an extra year on both on sand, so it is what it is. It was crazy weather in that Bama game too.
Yeah, but, and it was on defense is really where that weather came in, where Michigan was just really beating the hell out of Alabama. On offense, the offensive line pretty much handled the Alabama defensive line. Michigan ran the ball really well, especially towards the end. I mean, granted, they were playing Davis Warren. Davis Warren threw a touchdown pass on that Alabama defense. I mean, that's just sad for them. Seriously.
Yes.
Seriously, that's sad for them. But it is hard to judge because there's a lot of things like, it was just a game that, no one necessarily cared about. Alabama was pissed that they were there. But it's still kind of like a window into this year, kind of like that's where I'm going. We haven't seen like this group of Ohio State players play together yet, but I'm giving them the benefit of the doubt because of what they did in the playoffs and then the national title game. They put something together for that offensive line. Excuse me.
We lost Simmons, halfway through, and then we lost Seth McLaughlin a couple games after that.
And Donovan Jackson's starting for the Vikings right now.
Yeah,
that's a big loss. He started in the preseason game today.
Yeah, so Jackson's a big loss. He's the biggest loss. He played the whole year and switched over to left tackle. We need him. He was the savior of the entire season, pretty much. He gets a lot of props. So it's going to come down to everyone is saying giving glowing reviews to Ethan Oinawa. He's just supposed to be an absolute beast at left tackle. Could have been a third round
redshirt senior too. Well,
yeah,
I mean, he's a older guy.
Yeah, and he did well last year. He's just a monster, and after some time in the Ohio State weight room, I'm sure he's going to get even better. So I'm expecting really good things there. It's just a lot of depth, a lot of playing time. Like most of these guys have, played in the playoffs or started in the playoffs. I mean, that line was great against a gauntlet. So, I mean, this is going to be one of the strengths of the team, and it needs to be when you're breaking in new running backs and especially a new quarterback. So,
and new offensive line coach and new offensive coordinator.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I'm probably like the most nervous about offensive and defensive coordinator. I mean, that's probably like the biggest question mark, right?
And then they all got to go play Texas.
Yeah.
I mean, the only way it could be worse is if it was at Texas. At least Ohio State gets them at home. I mean,
so I honestly
that's rough.
I am going to be, a little hesitant. I mean, I just think it's going to be a low scoring game. Like, we might pull it out, but it's going to be a good experience for him either way. Obviously I want to win, but that's going to be a really tough one with the young quarterback. So, I think most likely it's going to, I don't know if I'm going to pick Ohio State for that one, to be honest. Like, unless things change and, the camp, we haven't been hearing amazing things or anything from quarterback play either. So, we have some time until the first week, but not a ton of time. So,
yeah, not a lot of time. Need to pick a quarterback. But okay, let's take a pick, because whenever we're picking these, sometimes I think, who's going to have the best offensive line again in like the whole season or in the game, like in the rivalry game, because Michigan has had better offensive line play than Ohio State has had offensive line play in the rivalry the last 4 years. So it's almost like two picks. Do you think this year Ohio State's going to have the better offensive line in the game, or just overall in the season? So give your pick.
I think both. I got to get going, but my answer is both.
Yes, you do. Oh, your answer is both. I'm shocked. I think Ohio State's going to have a better offensive line for the season, but every time we get into that game, Michigan turns something on that offensive line, and Ohio. I don't think it's Michigan. I don't believe has punted in the fourth quarter of all 4 games of the last 4 years. Hasn't punted. So that offensive line is working it. And really, I think your defensive line is going to be a problem this year with 4 new starters. But we'll see. I have no clue because we haven't seen them play.
Yep.
But anyway. All right. We'll let you go. We're going to take off here. It's going to be a little bit short tonight, but hope everyone has a great weekend. Take care. Please like and subscribe and share, and go Blue.
Go Bucks.